Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm Jeff Power, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. My co-host, as always, is Logan Glaser of RealTime Fantasy Sports as well. Logan, good to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you too, Jeff. Week
Should be
13.
a fun show as always. Like you said, Logan, week 13. I can't believe it. Craziness. I mean, the season is about over in most of your leagues. I can't believe it's week 13 already.
Yeah, it just flies by. Just thinking from the offseason when we were preparing for drafts and already here 2 weeks before playoffs start in the majority of leagues.
Yep, exactly. And as always, we're going to preview every game on the week 13 slate. We're going to give you our favorite plays as well in each game, favorite fantasy plays. So what I did, I don't know if you did anything similar, Logan, but I thought since so many teams are on a bye and we have people hurt, I kind of went with some players that might not be on your radar. So I thought maybe I'd give you some options to use for those 6 teams on a bye this week. I tried to make it a little different, maybe give you some players you weren't thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I did kind of a mix and match. I did some star players, some lower end players, some medium players, just to give a little variety of that. But all players that I think will do well this week.
Exactly. And as always, we're happy to answer any questions you might have. Always a lot of fun getting those in our chat there. So if you have any questions at all, we'll get to them as we're previewing the show, as we're previewing the games, I should say. So don't hesitate at all to put them in there and take advantage of all of our different options we have to offer here at Real Time Fantasy Sports as well. We have our great Pick'em games, DFS. Pick'em, we offer all sorts of different sports too, not just football, right, Logan?
Yeah, absolutely. We offer NBA, PGA, NHL's new within the last couple of weeks, and then we also have MLB with that as well. But yeah, football and basketball are definitely the most two popular with that. We also have Tiger Woods teeing off today for
Yeah,
PGA. So
I was just going to say that. I was going to say Tiger Woods is teeing off here shortly. An hour, I think. Was his tee time 11:30 our time? Something
yeah,
around there?
11:30 with that Central Time. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does. I think.
Yeah. He said he's going to try to play in one event a month is
Yeah, it
what I
sounds like
read.
he's fully healthy walking around, but I think it might take a couple of tournaments maybe for him to get back in the swing of things with
For sure.
competition. But
He'll be
as long as he's walking around healthy, who knows? And it is also only a 20-man field this week for PGA, so he could easily be top 10, just finish in the top half.
Exactly. It'll be interesting to see what he does. So enough golf talk. We can talk some football now, Logan, but I will be watching that golf today, I think, when we get off this stream. So I think that should be fun seeing what he can do. All right, week 13. I talked about the buys, but I'm going to mention them now. All the teams on a bye this week: Baltimore Ravens, Buffalo Bills, Chicago Bears, Las Vegas Raiders, Minnesota Vikings, New York Giants. So you're looking at Saquon Barkley's off, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Josh Jacobs, Justin Jefferson was likely back if they played this week. So there are a lot of good players off.
Yep,
Not
there
good.
sure is. Lots of stars going to be out this weekend. Lots of teams that kind of just need fillers. We also had a couple injuries, but then we also have a couple people that have been returning from injuries. Example, Kyron Williams last week and 38 fantasy points.
Yeah.
So,
And we kind of talked about this on our waiver wire video we did earlier this week, but some leagues actually started the playoffs already. The Scott Fishbowl, which is a huge contest in the fantasy community, they started last week. So there's like a cutoff with you have to score so many points to keep advancing. So I know next year I didn't really pay attention to that, quite frankly, the when the playoffs started and teams on a bye, but it's going to hurt me this week. I have a lot of players on a bye. Not Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Devontae Adams, Gus Edwards. So
yeah.
next year, when I'm doing a contest like that, I think I might just avoid those players. I always say you got to just get in and see what happens. But when you're in a huge contest like that, I think you need to pay close attention to those bye weeks for sure.
Yeah, and it's also with some of our contests with RTFFC and TFC. It doesn't start this week, but for next week,
Mm-hmm.
those individual league contests will start. Not the overall championship, but your individual league playoffs will start with that. And we've got a couple of teams on buys next week, just with the Cardinals and Commanders. So
Yep.
definitely something to take into a factor. Which neither one of those teams have huge star players, but you got Brian Robinson, James Conner, Kyler Murray, Marquise Brown. So a couple players there as well.
Definitely guys that can still help fantasy teams. So it's just something you might want to think about when you're drafted next season. Not that this season's over with yet, but just keep it in mind. I think it's something to definitely pay attention to. So, all right, let's get into these Week 13 games now, Logan. First game's the Thursday night game. That is the Seattle Seahawks 6-5 at the Dallas Cowboys 8-3, 47.5 for the over/under. Cowboys 9.5 point favorites here. They're minus 9.5. I think the Seahawks can keep it within that. I mean, the Cowboys have blown people out at home this year.
Yeah, I think these teams are going in opposite directions. Cowboys have just looked so dominant, especially on the defensive side of the ball. And then Seahawks, they are just struggling, especially with their offense, too. Geno Smith has just had a couple of bad games in a row. So I think personally, I'm going to go with Dallas. I do see this game kind of playing out similar to how Seattle's game last week against San Francisco was. If I had to guess how this game is going to turn out, San Francisco made a couple of big plays in the second quarter, which kind of propelled them to that lead. So I can kind of see this kind of playing out similar to that.
I agree. They kept it close for a while, and then they pulled away big. And I think that the Cowboys do the same thing. I think they cover that. I'm not sure about that over/under. I don't know if the Seahawks can score enough to get it over 47.5.
Yeah,
It's going to be
but
tough
then
against their
you
defense.
look at Dallas's offense, and they put up
That's true.
40 points last week. But yeah, I think if I had to choose on that, I would still go under. Unders have hit almost on all the primetime games.
It has been,
All
yeah.
the primetime games have all been low scoring.
Those Thursday night games, I think you go into it, it's a short week. It's tougher to prepare. Guys are banged up. So I think it kind of makes sense sometimes when the offenses can't score a lot. I can kind of see why it happens with this short week. All right, let's talk about your favorite play in this game. Who do you like?
Yeah, player I'm going to go with is Zach Charbonnet, just because he gets so much volume without Kenneth Walker in there, and it's mainly through receiving. He has 14 receptions in his last 3 games, 29 carries in the last 2. He hasn't scored a touchdown yet, but he's a pretty safe volume or floor player. You're looking at minimum 10 points with how many touches that he gets with receiving and also with his carries. Again, Kenneth Walker is out this week. It sounds like he's going to return next week. He doesn't have a great matchup this week, but he's still going to get 15-plus touches, and he's kind of on fringe. Do you start him, do you not, depending on your other options. So if you have a star running back, I would obviously play him over Charbonnet, but if you have another guy that's kind of a fringe, I feel safe with Charbonnet getting at least 10 fantasy points.
Yeah, like you said, game script matters. It could be playing from behind. He catches the ball well. He could really rack up some PPR points there late in the game. I agree with that. I think you got to go with all the Cowboys pass catchers. I think they're going to have big games. Dak Prescott's going to have a huge game. But the guy I'm kind of zero in on who I think should be more dependable, he has been lately, and I think he's really a good play going forward, and that's Brandon Cooks. He has 70-plus yards 2 of 3 games. He's becoming a lot more consistent. He has touchdowns 4 of 6 games as well. The Seahawks allow the 14th most fantasy points to receivers. So I think Brandon Cooks is a really solid play at this point of the season in this explosive offense. And I even saw on Twitter, I can't remember who mentioned it, and I should, but it might have been Chase Daniel, who kind of breaks down QBs now, the former Chargers backup, and he's been a backup with a lot of teams. Actually went to Mizzou, but he does a great job breaking down QBs, and he said Dak Prescott should be in the running for MVP at this point. That's how good he's playing, and that whole offense is really clicking after a slow start to the season. All right, next game, Logan. Chargers 4-7 at the Patriots 2-9. Not very exciting game here. You got Justin Herbert going on the road to face the lowly Patriots. 40.5, pretty low number there for the over/under. Patriots are a home dog. They're plus 5.5 there. Do you think the Chargers go in, win that game?
Yeah, I'm going with the Chargers. It's a must-win game for them to keep their season alive. The Patriots season's already over. Chargers at 4-7, they had expectations to make the playoffs, and they might have to win out to make the playoffs. They might be able to have one more loss and sneak in, but this is a must-win game for them, and Patriots are just a mess. They don't know.
It looks like Bailey Zappi's going to start this week. 40.5 is really a low number, but
it is.
I don't know if the Patriots can score enough to cover that. I think the Chargers will be able to put up some points against his defense, but man, the Patriots offense is a concern. So I might even go the under there, even though it's really low.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. A player I'm going to be targeting, he is a star running back with that, and that is Austin Eckler. So he's really a boomer bust play. He does have fumbles in his last 2 games, but 4 of his 8 games that he's played in, he's had over 21 fantasy points. And again, this is a must-win game for them. I think they're going to give plenty of carries, or again, Chargers have just been struggling in the passing game just because of receivers staying healthy. It's kind of similar to all they can really rely on is Keenan Allen in that passing for the receiving core. So I think Eckler will get a little bit more involved with that. So I'm going to go with him as my star player with that.
Quite frankly, he's been disappointing this year, Eckler. He has had some big
Has.
games, like you
Again,
said.
he's
But
boom or bust. He's had some
yeah.
great games, but then he's also had 3 games under 10 fantasy points.
So my thinking with my next pick, this is kind of an under the radar one, is what do the Patriots do when they go up against a team? Bill Belichick, he wants to take away that star player. That's Keenan Allen. He just gets so many looks. It's ridiculous. They throw to him nonstop. So I'm thinking somebody else might step up. And that could be Jaylen Gon this week. Again, a little bit of a deep dive, but he played 80% of the snaps last week. He was targeted 5 times in that game. He has 11 targets his last 2 games that he's played. And the Patriots allow the 9th most fantasy points to receivers. So I think Guyton might be a sneaky play. If you're looking for a number 3 receiver, you got a lot of people on a bye. I might take a chance on him in this matchup because I think they're going to do their best to try to shut down Keenan Allen. Not sure if they'll be able to, but that could create more opportunities for Guyton. And even at the tight end spot too, I think the Chargers tight ends, both them Parham and Everett, could be decent plays as well in this matchup as Patriots really try to shut down Keenan Allen. All right, next game, Logan. Lions 8-3 at the Saints 5-6. This could be a decent game. Lions are favored at home. Saints are +4. Over/under is 47, so pretty high number there. Do you think we get that 47 mark? Do you go over or under there?
I think I'm going under just because I trust the Saints defense a little bit more, and the Saints offense hasn't been great. Derek Carr's had some struggles recently. And then you look in the counterpart, Jared Goff had some struggles during Thanksgiving. And we know that Detroit can move the ball in offense. They've got the weapons to move it, but they have just really struggled in the last couple of weeks. They should have lost to the Bears 2 weeks ago. They made that comeback with a couple minutes left, and they try to do the same against the Packers on Thanksgiving, but came up short there. So I'm going to go with the under on that game. I do still see Detroit winning this game, but I'm going to go with the under. And a player I'm going to be kind of looking at is Taysom Hill with that. So Olave is struggling with a bit of an injury. Taysom Hill has put some together pretty good weeks. He was second in receiving yards last week as a tight end for the Saints. And he also gets some goal line carries. You'll see maybe throw up here, pass here and there. So he's a very flexible player, but they've been giving him more looks at tight end.
Yeah, he's been getting a lot more catches at tight end. I actually have him as a flex play in one of my leagues this week. Never thought I would do that, but I like his chances here as well. Like you said, he's been getting more work as a receiver. And then also, they have some injuries. Chris Olave is no sure thing to play, as a thigh injury. A concussion, I should say. The thigh injury is Rashid Shaheed. He's more likely to miss than Olave. Olave has concussion, could get cleared before the week is out, but he's up in the air as well. So I think both Hill and Juwan Johnson are decent plays at the tight end spot because of that. I actually am intrigued by A.T. Perry a little bit. Again, another deep dive, but he could end up starting this week because of the injuries to Olave and Shaheed. He scored a touchdown 2 weeks ago. Big, tall receiver, good in the red zone. Detroit allows the 7th most fantasy points of receivers. I think the Lions are up in this game. Saints playing from behind, have to throw the ball. So definitely want to consider maybe using Perry in week 13. I think the Lions win. I'm not completely confident in that, though. This is a tough game for me. Go on the road. They didn't play well last week. Like you said, they haven't played well in a couple weeks as well, but I guess I picked the Lions here to win, and I go with the under 2 in this one because of the Saints defense is pretty good, and I don't exactly.
Yeah, especially if Olave does miss.
Yeah.
I do not see this game going over, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't love the Saints offense either. They've been struggling kind of getting that running game going. Kamara's been a little bit of a disappointment in that aspect. So I'll go under and a not confident Lions pick for the win and to cover that. Plus, was it 4, did I say? Plus 4.
Yeah, it's the Lions 4. Yep.
All right, next game on the slate, Logan. Falcons 5-6. Been kind of a surprise this year at the Jets 4-7. Big Aaron Rodgers has returned to practice on a limited basis. They opened up his window there to return. Who knows what's going to happen there? I just personally, I don't see it. I don't see him returning this year. It just doesn't make a lot of sense and a lot of risk
Yeah, I think a
involved there.
lot will come down to the Jets like next 2 games. If they somehow do win their next 2 games, I could see them possibly trying to have Rodgers return with a 6-7 record. But if they lose one of those games, I think their playoff hopes are gone, and just don't see any way that he returns if they don't have a shot at the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. It's usually an injury. It takes a year to come back from, and he's coming back in a few months. So I don't know what's going on there. Just kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
there has been clips with him at practice,
Yeah,
so
doesn't look too bad. I agree. And the line on this, the over under is a whopping 34, and the Jets are plus 2.5. So the Falcons are actually favored on the road. The line is 34. That is really, really low. It's
yeah.
so low, it makes me want to go over, but I
Yeah,
still don't
just
know if
because,
I
like, if
believe
you
it.
have, like, a punt return or a block kick or
Yeah.
interception for a touchdown, then it completely flips the game, and, um, it's looking good for the over if one of those plays happens.
Yeah, I guess I go with the over because of that, and I like the Falcons to win just because I don't think the Jets are very good. Tim Boyle, I don't think is the answer at QB. You kind of mentioned this on the stream. I might go with Zach Wilson just with the way Boyle looked last week. I just don't think
Yeah,
he brings very much
I
to the table.
Zach Wilson had a couple games where he played
He did.
fine,
He started playing better. I agree.
but then there's some games where he just makes terrible decisions,
Yep.
throws a pick six, and then game's over. But, yeah, I think I would rather have my offense run through Zach Wilson, I think, than Tim Boyle.
Even Trevor Siemian, I might give him a chance. He's played well in the past in spot starts in Minnesota and other
Yeah.
spots around the league. I may even look at him because I don't think Boyle's very good. Who do you like
No.
as a player in this game? Do you like anyone?
So yeah, I would probably stay away from anyone, but guy I'm going to go with is Kyle Pitts. He's been terrible this season so far just because of how he's been used. But Arthur Smith did say that he's going to be used a little bit more. And this is not a great week for tight ends with buys. You got TJ Hawkinson on a buy, Cole Kmet on a buy, Dalton Kincaid on a buy. You got Mark
Yep.
Andrews out for the season. So there's a lot of tight ends that are currently on a buy this week. I know in a couple of my leagues, I'm going to be forced to play Kyle Pitts, which you wouldn't expect to be saying that you're going to be forced to be playing probably one of the top or most athletic tight ends. But here we are with how he's being used. So I feel comfortable starting him a couple of my leagues. So I'm going to go with him
I
as my
I have to start him in one of my leagues as well. And like I said, I have to start him. I usually don't
yeah,
have better
which is
options.
just crazy. The last
Yeah.
2 or 3 years, he's been drafted as a top 8 tight end, and
Hasn't lived up to the hype,
yep,
unfortunately.
every year he's going to be used differently, and
Yep.
hasn't been the
So,
case.
ironically, I have a tight end as well as my pick for this game, but it's with the Jets, and that's Tyler Conklin. So he's been one of the few bright spots, in my opinion, in their passing game outside of Garrett Wilson. He has at least 4 receptions, 3 of his last 4 games. He had 4 catches last week. He has double-digit fantasy points 2 of those games as well. So I think he's a good streaming option against the Falcons. They allow the 4th most fantasy points to tight ends, have struggled in that area to stop the tight end. And I always say this, when these backup QBs are in there or rookie QB, I feel like they target the tight end a lot. So that's happening in New York. So I think Conklin could get some work this week. Like you said, a lot of good tight ends off this week. So Conklin's a decent option, in my opinion. He's out there in a lot of leagues as well. All right, next game, Logan, another exciting one. Cardinals 2-10 at the Steelers, 7-4. Over-unders 41, another really low one. Pittsburgh's favored -5.5, pretty big number. They, quite frankly, they just win, and I don't know how they do it. I don't think they're a very good team, but they just get it done. And their
Yeah,
offense did look better with Matt Canada not calling plays last week, so I think that's a positive. Defense keeps them in games with TJ Watt, but I don't think the defense is outstanding either. But they just somehow win.
yeah, they put up 400 plus yards last week with Canada gone as their first game. But yeah, as you mentioned, they
Blame
find a way
Canada.
to win. They have
Blame
not
Canada.
had a very hard schedule, and they don't have a very hard schedule throughout the remaining of their games, which is why they could win the 3 or 4 more games and finish with 11 wins. And who knows what could
You like
happen.
them to cover that 5.5?
I
I could see
do
them
at
winning by
home.
6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've moved the ball a lot better last week with Canada gone. I think they had a couple different play calls With that, Arizona's really struggling. Even though Kyler Murray has returned, they lost by 20 to the Rams last week at home.
Yeah.
With that,
Murray
so
did not look good last week, in my opinion. He did
no,
not play a good
he
game.
sure did not. His first game back, he did fine against Atlanta, but last week he did not look great.
But the thing is, his fantasy production still was decent. So fantasy owners
Yeah,
don't care. But from a football perspective, I just didn't think he played very well.
yeah.
Who's your pick in this game?
So I'm going to go with Najee Harris as my pick, and he probably has the most surprising stat that I've seen so far this NFL season. He leads the NFL with most carries over 15 yards.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, I would not have guessed that at all.
No, me
So
either.
he has the most carries with over 15 yards, which he might be one of
Interesting.
my last guesses on
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
With that, but yeah, he ranks as the running back 27 for fantasy purposes, but he has been playing a lot better as lately. He has 4 touchdowns in his last 6 games. Even though that they said they're going to get Jaylen more and more involved, Harris scored last week. He's had a couple of good weeks in a row. So I'm going to go against him against a bad Arizona rush defense.
I like that call. I like both those backs in that game. I have Najee Harris in my lineup prep column this week as a hot play. I think he's going to be a good play. I totally agree with you there. And I'm kind of intrigued by Greg Dortch. Again, looking a little deeper here because 6 teams on a bye, people hurt, but he's played at least 75% of the snaps 2 straight games. The return of Kyler Murray has been great for him. Kyler Murray just likes Greg Dortch for whatever reason. Scored his first touchdown of the season last week. He's been targeted 17 times his last 2 games. Steelers 24th overall against the pass. I think Arizona should be able to have some success throwing the ball here. And Dortch could be a good number 3 play at the fantasy receiver spot this week, in my opinion. So that's my deep dive there in Arizona. All right, next game, Logan. Colts 6-5 at the Titans 4-7. I think this is a tough one. Titans actually are +1 at home, so Colts are favored on the road. I think this is a tough game to pick, though. And the Colts, the over-under for this game as well is 42.5. So think Titans win this one, or are you going with the Colts on the road?
I'm going to go with the Titans at home this game. Jonathan Taylor is also out for the Colts.
Yep.
He's expecting to miss maybe 2 or 3 weeks, but I think this is a good matchup for the Titans. I really like them in this. It's a huge matchup for them as well. They're 4-7, and Colts currently hold the final wild card position at 6-5. So this is a massive game for Tennessee. If they lose this game, their season's over. I think they're still going to go hard for it. I do think if they do lose, we're going to see kind of Derrick Henry kind of fade out of the picture a little bit. They might give him more rest. But I'm going to go with him just because I think they're going to go all in to win this game. Give him tons of carries. He had 18 carries last week, 2 touchdowns, over 20 fantasy points. And Colts defense has really struggled. So I'm going to go with Derrick Henry, and I'm going to ride with the Titans this week.
I agree. I am picking the Titans too in this game. I just like them at home. I think Mike Vrabel's a really good coach, kind of underrated. He just keeps them in games. He's kind of like Mike Tomlin, just keeps them in games. I don't know how he does it. I don't think the Titans have the best roster in the world, but their defense plays hard. I think Will Levis has actually been a spark for the offense. I know his numbers haven't been outstanding. He's kind of faded since his start, but I still think he does some good things, brings some good things to the table. I like them to win this game. 42.5 for the over-under, though. That's a tough one. I actually might go under, personally. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I kind of lean maybe with you on that. With kind of more a slow pace team and the Titans.
Yeah, especially if they run the ball like you mentioned. Yep. My play for this one is Josh Downs. So he had kind of faded the last few weeks, but they had a bye before last week. He's been battling a knee injury, but he came back out of that bye. He was heavily involved in the offense. He had 13 targets. That was a season high for him. He caught 5 of them, so not a great percentage, but still 13 targets is a ton of them. I think he's finally healthy over that knee injury. I think he's going to get a lot of work again. Again, he's played really well before he had that knee injury, and it slowed him down for a few weeks. So I think Downs is a guy you should feel pretty good about as your wide receiver number 3. Finally got a question in here, Logan. First one of the day. Would you start Chuba Hubbard or Zach Charbonnet? I think I know your answer.
Yeah, I think both are projected about the same. I think I'm going to go Charbonnet just because does have control of that entire backfield. Hubbard splits basically even with Miles Sanders. Um, Hubbard does get more receptions than Sanders, and he probably does have a better matchup with Tampa Bay, even though that over-under is only 37 with a low-scoring game. But I think I'm going to go with the back that is going to have the entire backfield control.
So I
What do you
think
think?
I agree. I think it's a toss up. Ironically, my weight rankings, I have Charbonnet 26 and Hubbard 27. So they're right next to each other. I think it's really, I think it's going to be similar production between both of them. The thing that pushed Hubbard over the edge last week was his touchdown. So he ended up having over 20 fantasy points. But if you look at the numbers, if you take that touchdown of the way, they were very similar to Charbonnet. I think I might go Charbonnet because I think he could catch a few more passes. And like you said, kind of has that whole backfield to himself. I think it's a really close call, though. I think you could make a case for either player, but I'm like you.
Yeah,
I
if he
probably
wasn't playing
lean
Dallas, I would
Charbonnet.
for sure go Charbonnet. But with him
Yeah,
playing Dallas, I do think it's a toss-up where you can go either way. But I think I still lean towards him.
yeah. Hubbard definitely has a better matchup. The Tampa Bay is really good against the run. They struggle against the pass, though, and I think that bodes well for him to catch some passes out of the backfield as Bryce Young's harassed. But I'll lean Charbonnet here, but again, not completely confident in that. I think you could really make a case for either player. All right. Anybody else have any other questions? Feel free to put them in the chat. I appreciate you putting in there your question there, Caden, and good luck to you in your game this week. All right. Next game, Dolphins 8-3 at the Commanders 4-8. Have you watched any of the Dolphins in-season Hard Knocks, Logan?
I have not.
You have not. It's pretty good. Mike McDaniel is a funny guy. It's good. He's entertaining, makes that show pretty good. I recommend it if you have the time.
I feel like that's the perfect team to have on Hard Knocks.
It is. The Phillips injury last week, though, was hard to watch. That was on the show, and it was he was really emotional. It's tough to see that. You don't really see that up close stuff when you're just watching the game, on TV. But when you have those in-depth things and him going down, he was having a breakout year. He's always battled injuries, so that was tough to watch. But it's a good show. I recommend it to anybody out there if you want to watch the in-season Hard Knocks. So as for the game, like I said, Dolphins 8-3, Commanders 4-8. Dolphins are 9.5-point favorites on the road, 49 for the over/under. So big number there. Could be a high-scoring game.
Yeah, and I like the over in this. I think Washington
Okay.
is one of the worst defenses in the league personally,
Yep.
and you got a top offense in Miami. I think lots of points can be put up. Washington, I think, will be down early and be forced to throw the ball with that. Their last three games, they've given up 29, 31, and 45 last week against Dallas. So that defense is just a mess. Their season's over with that. Player I'm going to be looking at is going to go with Tua, just because I love everyone in Miami's offense for this week. They also have a chain back, but Waddle had over 100 receiving yards last week. Tyreek Hill had over 100. That offense just clicks against bad teams, and this is a great matchup for them.
Yeah, I think I might go the over too. That's a lot of points, but I think the Dolphins cover too. The Commanders are a mess. I know they're at home, but they just fired Jack Del Rio, their defensive coordinator. I'm not sure that's going to really help things there. Maybe it will. Who knows? He has a long track record of coaching, been around the league for a long time, but still, that defense has not been good. I think Ron Rivera is just trying to save his job at this point, personally, by making moves like that.
Yeah.
I actually have the same player as you, Tua. That's my player to target. And it's mainly because he hasn't played great in recent weeks for fantasy teams. He has fewer than 15 fantasy points, 2 of 3 games, but he's played some good defensive teams during that stretch. I think he's going to have a huge game this week. Like you said, Commanders awful defensively. They allow the most fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, most. So I think that's great news for Tua, for Waddle, for Hill. Even Mostert, I think he could find the end zone because he gets the goal line work. I think they're going to score some points if they bring it down there. So I think it's a great game to target for fantasy teams, fantasy owners with a lot of great matchups here. All right, Logan, we have actually someone had the same question with Charbonnet. It's kind of ironic, Hubbard and Charbonnet, but they also have A.J. Dillon available. Would you put Dylan in over those two, or are you
Yeah, so
sticking
Dylan
with?
is questionable to play this week. I believe he will be playing. I think
Yeah,
a
he kind
lot.
of had the same injury last week, and he played with it.
Yeah, he played through that. Another huge piece is if Aaron Jones plays. He didn't practice yesterday. If he does play, then I'm fading Dylan completely. If he doesn't play, though, then it is an intriguing option. Um,
It is. I think he's similar to those other two. I would still probably have Charbonnet as the guy out of those three. I think it's close though. Dylan's, I mean, their numbers are all really similar. They're all getting around 14 carries and running for around 50 yards and getting 3 or 4 catches. That's all
yeah,
three of their numbers are like just like that as you look at them. So
yeah,
it's a tough decision. I can see why these owners are struggling with that. I probably lean Charbonnet again just because I think the Seahawks are down, having to throw the ball. He could get some dump offs, especially since they rush the passer so well in Dallas. So that could create opportunities for Smith to get rid of the ball really quick, and backfield could get a lot of work because of that.
yep,
So
agreed.
that's what I'm saying there. All right, good luck to you though as you make that tough decision as well there, Sharky 65. All right. Next game on the slate. This could be a good one. We talked about this before we came on the show as we were looking at the games because we didn't think there was a lot of great ones, but Broncos suddenly red hot Broncos 6-5 at the Texans 6-5. So this has playoff implications at Houston. The line is -3.5 for Houston, over under 47.5. So that's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
What do you think happens here?
I think I'm going to go with Houston, and I think I'm just going to go under slightly. I don't feel confident in the over under, but I do feel confident in Houston. I do think they get this win. A guy I'm going to be looking at is going to be Nico Collins. I think he's just been underlooked, just with the explosion of Tank Dell. But I still think Nico Collins is that number one wide receiver. He's been getting the most targets. He has 20 targets in his last 2 games. He's had 37 fantasy points in his last 2 games. Just Tank Dell gets so much attention
Yeah.
when Collins has been putting up just as good of numbers for more consistently with a number one. He had 7 receptions, 104 yards, and a touchdown last week. I do think they are both great 1-2 options with that. I don't think you can go wrong with either one or play both of them. But I like him this week.
I have both of them as top 15 fantasy receivers this week. I agree. Play if you have them, play them. You got to do it. So I like that call. It's a tough one. I think the Texans are going to win, but -3.5. It puts you right on that cusp. They're in a lot of close games, so I could see them winning maybe by 3. So
Yeah.
I may actually take the Broncos to cover this, but I agree with you as well. I'll go with the under here. I think the Texans win, but the Broncos cover, and I'll say the under as well. I just not completely sold on the Broncos offense as being too explosive, even though the Texans defense isn't great. But the Broncos defense isn't too bad either. So I'll say the under here. And my pick is Russell Wilson. So he's really turned his game around this year. I guess Sean Payton being around has been a big plus for him. His numbers were down last week, but he played the Browns. They have the best pass defense in football, so I'm not getting down on him too much. He has 4 games this season with 20-plus fantasy points. They're going to need to score if they want to win this game. Texans 27th against the pass, allow the 8th most fantasy points a quarterback. So I think Wilson's a good play if you're looking for somebody this week as a plug-in play. All right. Another question just popped up on here we can get to if you want. Let's take a look at that. A full PPR pick, a running back flex, and tight end. So a lot of options here. Brees, Najee, Charbonnet, Downs, London, Amari, McBride, and Freiermuth. So he needs a running back out of that group. Who are you picking as a running back first? Who's your top running back?
Let's
Those
see.
3. It's
Najee
either
has a
Brees
great
or
matchup.
it's either Brees or
So
Harris. It's a close call there.
yeah, it's a toss up for me because Brees Hall definitely is more talented than Najee and more explosive, I personally think. But Najee just has such a great matchup at home against Arizona that I think I might lean towards going with him. Just with the Jets' offensive struggles, um, Pittsburgh moved the ball a lot better. He's getting the goal line work, so I think I'm going to go with Najee as a running back flex. Running
So
back.
I'll make it easy on you. I'll just go with Brees is my running back and Najee is my flex, and just avoid. I like
Yeah.
Downs in London. They just haven't done a whole lot. London Cooper's been really down lately. Now they could start Joe Flacco this week in Cleveland, so that worries me. So I might just take Brees and Najee as the running back and flex there, and then tight end it's McBride or Freiermuth. That's another toss up after
Yeah.
Freiermuth was
Freiermuth
finally
was
heavily
amazing
involved.
last week.
Yep. I'm leaning Freiermuth after last week. 100-yard
Yep.
game,
I
11
agree.
targets. McBride's banged up, has a groin injury. He played pretty well last week too. Had 7 catches, at least 5 catches, 3 straight games as well. So he's been consistent. But last week encouraged me. I go with the healthy Freiermuth coming off a big game there. So that's what I do. I like Brees Najee as your running back flex, and then Freiermuth as your tight end. But tough decisions there. I think you can make a case for London and Downs to be in the lineup as well. But that's the way I'm leaning with that one. Good luck to you there, Vito. All right, next game. I just talked about him a little bit. Actually, I skipped over that one. Sorry. I won't get too far ahead of myself. But Panthers 1-10 at the Buccaneers 4-7. So Panthers train wreck right now, going to Tampa Bay, who is kind of in that playoff hunt, but they're kind of fading now. This will be a must-win game for them if they want to have any chance of making the playoffs. Let's see what the over-under for this game is. It
37.
is 37, so a low-scoring game, -5.5 for the Buccaneers. I think the Bucs cover that. What about the over-under, though? What are you thinking there?
Yep, I agree. I think I'm going to go with the over just because of Carolina's turnovers. I think that sets up points for other teams. It's a lot easier with those
That's true.
turnovers.
Yep.
So even though their offense is kind of hit or miss with that, they turn the ball over so much. And that just sets up Tampa Bay to score and put up lots of points. Player I'm going to go with, he's been struggling a lot. And that's been Chris Godwin. So he has 4 straight fantasy weeks under 10 fantasy points. He only has 1 touchdown on the season, but he's been getting tons of targets. And as we mentioned, I love volume with either running backs or wide receivers. And I think it's a due week for him. And whenever you feel that, I feel perfectly fine slotting him into the lineup with that. He's only had 1 game under 6 targets, as mentioned, so he's getting the looks, averaging about 7 targets per game. So I like him this week and possibly to find the end zone.
So I agree with you on your pick of the Buccaneers to win and cover, and I'll say the over too because I'm not completely sold on this Bucs defense. They're good against the run, but they can be a little susceptible against the pass. So maybe they do something there, Carolina. And like you said, Panthers offense turns the ball over, puts their defense in bad situations. So I like that point that you made there. And my player is actually a player who had an awful game last week. And that's Adam Thielen. Had his first really bad game of the season since week 1. Caught just a pass for 2 yards on 3 targets, but I can't forget, he has at least 5 catches, 9 straight games before last week. So he's been so consistent. And like I said, Tampa, they allow the 4th most fantasy points to receivers, 31st overall against the pass. So they can be had through the air. And while Young isn't great, I think Thielen can get open and provide a good target for him. And I think he'll rebound this week in a big way and get back to at least 5 catches like he did for 9 straight weeks before last week. So I'm looking for him to rebound there. We got a tough question in the chat here from Hal, Logan. A chain, Ridley, Rice, Najee, or Javante? I mean, you can make a case for you like Najee a lot this week. A chain has huge upside. But I
and
think
a great matchup also
Yep.
against Washington.
Ridley's been red hot. Rice has been really good as well. And Javante, I mean, those are all really good options. Who are you leaning?
I think I'm going to fade a chain just because
I agree with that.
Kind of first game back, and you got several other great options with that. I might go Ridley.
That's my call.
Yeah, just because he has a great matchup as well, home against Cincinnati. I think that could be a high-scoring game. Cincinnati's kind of struggling with that, but you can't go wrong with any of the others. I think Rice would probably be one of my least ones, so I might go Ridley, Javante, Najee, Rice, chain.
Yeah, Ridley's my pick as well. I think he's been a lot more consistent finally. 80-plus yards, 3 or 4 games, 3 touchdowns his last 2 games. He's finally looks like he is, past those up and down performances. I think they're going to score some points against Cincinnati this week at home, like you mentioned. So I would go with Ridley. I think he has a high ceiling. I think if Chain was not coming off an injury and you knew his workload, I might lean him because I think his ceiling is probably the highest out of all these people, maybe just slightly more than Ridley. But I think the Chain could definitely be a factor in the fantasy playoffs for sure. But I got to wait and see with him after.
Yeah, I think they might be a little bit more careful with him too, because they kind of rushed him back a little bit, and he had picked up another injury when he came back for the second time. So,
and Hal makes a great point too. I saw those numbers when Zay Jones is in the lineup. Ridley's numbers are astronomically better, and he's in the lineup. So that's why he's been in the lineup the last few weeks after missing some time with an injury. So it's a great point by Hal too. So good luck to you, Hal, in making that tough decision. But Logan and I both think Ridley is the play here, but definitely can make a case for other players. All right, Logan, next game on the slate, Browns. That's who I was kind of teasing before. I kind of moved ahead there when I was talking about their QB situation. So Browns 7-4 at the Rams 5-6. This is a scary game to pick as well, in my opinion. Rams are favored by 3.5 against the 7-4 Browns, who could be without Dorian Thompson Robinson. So what do you think happens here? I'm probably going with the Rams.
I think I am too. Rams have actually, these are two teams kind of headed in opposite injury. Rams are almost completely healthy now, which they've been battling that injury bug all throughout the season. And now it's kind of flipped, and Cleveland's really struggling with some injuries. Especially at that QB position. Again, Joe Flacco might be the starting quarterback this week. Is kind of
he just got signed too. He just got signed.
Yeah, which
he's like last year when whatchamacallit, he got traded to the Rams. Oh, Baker Mayfield. He got traded like midweek, and then he had to start. He had a huge game.
Yeah,
I don't think Flacco can do that.
Days of practice, and then
I don't think Flacco can do that. I'm going with the Rams. Agreed.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Rams too. My player is going to be Kyron Williams. I think he's been a league winner so far. He's ranked as a top 15 running back on fantasy season, with being placed on the IR. Also, teams already have their bye. So, I mean, that's 5 games, and he's still top 15 running back with that 38 fantasy points last week. Most leagues he went undrafted, got through free agency, but I think this is a good matchup for him too, as Cleveland kind of struggles against the run. Last week, Denver put up 170 rushing yards. So I expect that to continue.
I think Williams is the only Ram I trust in this matchup. Even Cooper Kupp, he has not been good. I think it's 6 straight games less than double-digit fantasy points. He's just not healthy, I think. He was kind of in and out of that game last week as well. That ankle injury, I think something else might be bothering him too. Even Puka Nacua has been kind of quiet after his hot start. So it's Williams for me, or that's it. So I'm looking at a Brown, and someone mentioned that Chap Amari Cooper is going to get 27 targets if Flacco starts. It might be the case. You never know. Flacco will key on a receiver there, but I like a different option in the passing game. That's David Njoku. So he has double-digit fantasy points 6 straight games. I didn't realize how consistent he's been this season. 6 or more receptions, 3 straight games as well. So he's getting a ton of looks weekly in that offense. And I think if Flacco starts, he could look his way as well. And the Rams are a team that struggles against the tight end. 9th most fantasy points at tight ends this year. So even though they could have an uncertain QB situation with a Flacco off the street starting this week, I still think Njoku's a decent start there. Although I think they will really focus on, getting Ford and Chubb the ball, Ford and Kareem Hunt the ball. But I still think they're going to have to throw a little bit here, and it favors them a little bit to throw in this matchup against the Rams. All right, another question here, Logan. We're getting them in now fast and furious after a slow start to the show. Please pick a flex and a tight end between Najee, Ford, or Godwin, and Ingram or Freiermuth. So you have Najee, Ford, or Godwin. I think
I think I'm going with Najee.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm going to go with Najee there as my flex, and I think I'm going to go Freiermuth as my tight end. Ingram is a fine option as well, but Freiermuth was just so dominant last week that it's hard to go against him. Ingram has not found the end zone yet, which is, I think, a concern, but he's getting lots of looks. So
I think if you want to play it safe, you go with Ingram there. I think he has a higher floor, but if you want to go big, if you're in a spot where you need to win and put up a lot of points playing a good team, I'd go Freiermuth. I like your call there, and I agree with you. I just like Najee Harris more than Ford this week. Ford's been really consistent, though, in that starting role, but I like Harris just slightly better. Even last week, Ford had 9 carries, which isn't a ton. So that kind of worries me a little bit. He was productive though, 9 carries, 65 yards, but he doesn't get a ton of catches in that offense. And Harris has been getting a lot more work, at least 12 carries, 4 straight games. He had a season high in rushing yards last week. So I probably lean Harris against a bad Cardinals defense here, there. All right. Good luck to you in your game there, Joshua. All right, let's do another game before we get to a question, Logan. Another question, Logan. That's the game of the week, in my opinion. I think you would agree as well. 49ers 8-3 at the Eagles 10-1 should be a fantastic matchup here. That's not even the Sunday night game. It's the Chiefs Packers. I thought it was the Sunday night game, but I'm
No,
wrong.
it's a
It's an
yes.
afternoon game, 3:25 Central Time. So 49ers, Eagles, +3 for the Eagles. So the 49ers, even though they have a worse record, the Eagles are 10-1, went to the Super Bowl last year. They are +3, the Eagles. So they're not favored. 47.5 for the over-under, a high one. First of all, who do you think wins this game? I think it should be a great one.
I do think San Francisco wins. I do think it's a fair line because I would put it right there with that in terms of value wise. But with Eagles at home, this is basically signaling that San Francisco is 5.5 point favorites if they played on a neutral field, which I almost think is correct just because I think the Eagles have really struggled defensively this season. Offensively, both sides are moving the ball great, which is why I love the over. Over is 47.5. So I think my favorite play on that would be the over. Again, I do think San Francisco wins, but that line is just right in that hard mark that
It is. I agree. It's a tough call. Who's your player? I think you can go with a number of different
yeah,
players.
I think I'm going to go with Brock Purdy as my player in this just because I think this is going to be a high scoring game. Their secondary is a little bit weaker and for Eagles with that. So I'm going to go with him. He is a top 10 fantasy QB so far this season, which is
I agree. I think he's going to have a good game as well. I think a lot of their pass catching options will. I mean, I'm starting Debo, I'm starting Ayuk, I'm starting Kittle. I like the Eagles side of the ball too. And my favorite player is Devontae Smith this week. He hasn't been quite as good this year as last year, but he's really starting to heat up. He has 99 or more yards, 3 or 4 games. He has at least 14 fantasy points, 4 straight games. So he's erasing that slow start. A.J. Brown's production's kind of gone down a little bit, which means Smith's getting more looks. San Francisco also allows the 11th most fantasy points to receivers. So I think he has a good game this week once again, Smith, and plays well in this great matchup. And I'm actually going to go with the Eagles to win this game. So they just keep finding ways to win. I know it
yeah.
hasn't been pretty. They keep squeaking them out at the end of the game. They're at home. I think they probably have a chip on their shoulder because they're not favored in this game. So I think I'm going with the Eagles here at home, and I'll go with the over as well. I think there'll be a lot of points. So a couple questions here, Logan. So does the loss of Von Miller make the Bills defense much worse rest of the season? It's a good question. I personally don't think Miller's been as dominant as he has in recent years. He kind of mentioned, is it more name value? I mean, he makes a difference, but I don't think he's elite like he has been.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think last year was a big loss to them. I think he just was playing a lot better last year before that season-long injury. But this year he hasn't been playing great.
Yeah,
So I don't think it's a huge deal breaker for them.
I agree. I still think they have a pretty good defense even without him. I think he's facing some sort of domestic violence charge. Is that what it was as well? I think, unfortunately, I saw that as well.
Yeah,
So a lot of
lots
things going
of
on with him.
floating around.
Yeah. We'll see what happens there. But again, I don't think it's a huge loss for them rest of the season just because I'm not sure he's the same player he has been. All right, another question. One quarterback league. I have Kyler Murray and Jared Goff. Should I drop one for Trevor Lawrence?
I say absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, I think I'm
Who you
taking Trevor
dropping?
Lawrence over both of them.
Yeah, I think I do too because Lawrence is finally starting to heat up. 29 plus fantasy points, 2 straight games. Golf. Oh man, I actually might drop Kyler Murray out of those two just because I trust the Lions offense more. It's close. It's close though.
Yeah, you also have got Kyler Murray on a bye next week, so that also plays into
That's true too.
the playoffs do start week 14. I'd be going.
Yep. I'd go Goff and Trevor Lawrence going forward. That's what I would do there. So good luck to you there. All right, let's do another question. Chase, Adams, Garrett, and Ridley. That's who this guy drafted. He's heading into the playoffs. What receiver you look to target if I paired like Ridley and Chase? So he needs one more receiver out of that option. I mean, you got to just look at your matchups. I know Chase is a little more of a concern with Browning in there, but I think you're playing him. I think you're going to play Adams most weeks over Garrett Wilson. Personally, I just trust him more. So
Yeah,
I would probably go Ridley.
I do as well. With
Adams.
just that offense, again, it is going to be matchup based. If one player has a better matchup that week, I think you go with him.
Yep, I agree.
With those two.
So I think Adams is probably the way I lean most weeks over Wilson. All right, let's do it. We got 2 more games left, Logan. We got a few minutes left and another question up there, but let's get to these last 2 games quickly. Chiefs 8-3 at the Packers 5-6. I think we all agree that the Chiefs probably win this game. It's actually +6 for the Packers, 42.5 for the over/under. Why don't you just tell me who you think you're winning, who's winning, and your player?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kansas City just because of Aaron Jones. I don't think we'll be playing. Green Bay has been playing a lot better, but player I'm going to be looking at is Rashee Rice. He had 10 targets last week. He's kind of emerged as the number 1 wide receiver. It's kind of been floated around. He's had some good games, some bad games, but he's putting together a couple of good game stretch, 8 receptions, 107 yards, and a touchdown last week. So that's who I'm targeting.
I like that. Colin Rice been playing really good football lately. I think the Chiefs win as well on the road. I think they cover, but Packers are playing better. Jordan Love looked really good on Thanksgiving, in my opinion. He really has picked his game up, and I'm still think the Chiefs win this game, even though it's a tough one on the road and a lot of points to cover. I like Isaiah Pacheco a lot this week. 2 touchdown game last week, double-digit fantasy points, 2 straight, at least 16 carries, 3 straight games as well. So he's getting the volume. Packers 27th overall against the run. So I like Pacheco for a good showing in this one. All right, let's do another question from Rocky Adams here. Who would you go with as a running back number 2 between Aaron Jones, Charbonnet, and Jaylen Warren? Also, is Amari Cooper a better option over Addison for rest of the season?
I think I'm going with Jaylen Warren as my running back 2 out of those. I don't know if Aaron Jones plays just because he didn't practice, and he's been questionable most of the season actually with that. Again, Charbonnet is an okay option, but he's got such a hard matchup this week. But I really like Warren at home against Arizona.
I agree. I like Warren as well. I like that matchup the best. I know his game last week was a little bit of a disappointment, but he was really good the last 2 weeks, and he's kind of taken over as the starter. So I think he's your play there. And rest of the season, Cooper or Addison? It's just Justin Jefferson's returning, so you don't know what's going to happen with Addison. Now, their QB play is a little bit of a concern. Dobbs played terrible last week, but then in Cleveland, you have, I don't know who's starting there.
Yeah.
It's a tough call. I mean, I'd probably say Cooper because of his track record, but I'm not totally confident in that.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Again, both struggling with quarterbacks, but then also we've got Justin Jefferson who will be returning after that bye week. So I think I'll lean Cooper just slightly just because he is that wide receiver number 1 on that team.
I agree. All right. Last game of the week, Monday night game, Bengals 5-6 at the Jags 8-3. Would have been a better game if Joe Burrow was playing. It's -8.5 for the Jags, 39 for the over/under. So not a huge number. I actually would go over there. I think the Jags roll at home, though. They're starting to play better.
Yeah, I like that over too. I think that might be one of my favorite plays going with the over in there. Yeah. I know there's no Joe Burrow, but still, that's a low number.
I don't mind Browning. I don't think Browning looks that bad.
He hasn't played terrible.
No, I think they could score some points. I'll go over as well, but I think the Jags cover. Be a good game. A good game for fantasy points for both teams, I think. Who do you like as your play here?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Evan Ingram as my play, as I kind of mentioned earlier. He led the team in targets last week with 8. He's averaging 8 targets a year, getting plenty of looks. He just has not found the end zone yet, and I think it's due for him. He almost had it last week against Houston, but I do think he finally gets in his first touchdown of the season this week.
I like this is kind of a chalk statement, but he hasn't been great lately, so that's why I'm going to mention him. That's Travis Etienne. He has less than 60 rushing yards 3 straight games, so you might be a little down on him, but I think he's going to really get it going this week. He's still getting a lot of carries. He had 20 last week, 14 the week before. Bengals are just 29th overall against the run as well, so I could see him getting a lot of work in this matchup and produce big. So don't fade Etienne because of his recent play lately. I think he's due for a big rebound game this week. All right, one more question on you before we get out of here. We had a lot of good ones. It started slow, Logan, but man, it picked up in a hurry. So appreciate everybody watching and tuning in and interacting with us. We always enjoy getting these questions. So last one, are we running up Cooks in the flex tonight for Christian Watson? So you like Cooks or Christian Watson here for the flex?
I think I lean Christian Watson just slightly. But that's just personally. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I probably go the other way and go with Cooks. I just think he's been more consistent lately. I think Watson finally came to life last week, but that's really the first time he's done that in a long time. Even though he has touchdowns 2 straight games, he has less than 40 yards 5 straight games before last week. So I think I trust Cooks just a tad more, but I could see you making a point for Watson in this one for sure.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, Logan, fun show today. A lot of great questions. We got through all the games. Big week of games for a lot of fantasy owners as we get ready to end the season here, regular season, I should say. Another week or two left in most leagues. So good luck to everybody out there in your games this week. Should be a crucial week of games, do or die for a lot of teams. So good luck to you as well, Logan.
Thanks. You as well.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for watching our stream today. Really appreciate it. And good luck to all of you in your Week 13 games. This has been Jeff Paur with Real Time Fantasy Sports. Have a great day, everyone.